Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue dans En coulisses. En coulisses cette fois-ci à San Francisco, dans un laboratoire chocolat, le Chocolate Lab de Michael Recchiuti. Michael est un chocolatier extrêmement célèbre aux États-Unis et il nous reçoit aujourd'hui dans sa salle de jeu. Michael Recchiuti, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, my friend?
Oh, very well.
I just said in French, I don't know if you understood, that we are in your chocolate lab, looking like your playroom, no?
It is like my playroom.
And today, Michael, we of course going to speak about your chocolate dessert. I think looks like your emblematic dessert of here.
Yes.
I'm going to let you presenting this dessert
Oh, I
from
would
today,
love to. Yes.
and I will meeting you at the end of the show.
Okay.
Je vous laisse en sa compagnie et on se retrouve juste après pour la dégustation. En fait, à tout de suite.
Today, I'd like to demonstrate a cake that we make that's become very popular at the Chocolate Lab. It's actually our Chocolate Lab cake. So what I'd like to do is the first step is to actually make the cake. So what I have in front of me is a series of ingredients to make the Chocolate Lab cake. I have all these different types of dry ingredients, and what I'm going to do is just start out by mixing the dry ingredients together, and from there, we will add the wet ingredients. So the first thing I'm going to do is add sugar. So I'm going to add the granulated sugar, and the next I'm going to add flour, and the flour is already mixed with a little bit of salt, baking powder, and baking soda. So I'm going to lightly whisk this together. And the last dry ingredient is going to be cocoa powder. Making sure that you just whisk all of this together so it's evenly incorporated. So what I would like to do is make sure that all of these ingredients are incorporated evenly. So after we've mixed all of the dry ingredients together, just to make sure that everything's incorporated very evenly, I would prefer to sift the ingredients. So I'm going to place all of the ingredients through a sift. Try not to make a mess here. There's little pieces of cocoa powder and flour that need to be smoothed out here. All right, now that we've sifted all the dry ingredients, what I'm going to do is set these aside and grab another bowl. And what I'd like to do is incorporate all of the wet ingredients. I have here milk, whole milk, oil. I prefer a canola oil, just an oil that has not too much flavor. This recipe can also be used with really light olive oil. It just depends on if you like that really intense flavor. Next, I'm going to add the water. And with the water, you can change with the water. You can add coffee. You can add other types of liquid. You can add a juice. Depends on what type of flavor you have. I was using the water to keep it very neutral. And here I have a whole egg, and then I have a little bit of vanilla extract. So I'm adding the egg and the extract, mixing that together. And so now what I'm going to do is add the liquid to the dry. So I'm going to grab the dry, and we're going to add a little bit of the liquid first. I prefer using a whisk, but using the whisk as a folding technique versus whipping it. I'm trying not to incorporate too much air into this recipe, so I'm just really just whisking, but using the whisk as I would a spatula. So there we go. We have our mixture. And then what I'd like to do is we're going to pour this into a funnel, and then I prepare these little molds here. It's a very soft liquid batter, so you need to place it into something that it won't leak out of. I'm using these ring molds, but I'm covering the bottom of the ring molds with a little bit of tin foil, and I sprayed the inside of the molds, or you can line it with butter. If I was making a large batch of this, I would normally use something like this funnel here, and then I could fill a lot of molds, so make it really easy. But since we only have a little bit, I'm going to just fill some of the molds with a ladle. What I've discovered is that my results from using tin versus any type of silicone mold is that I find that I have better results with the texture and a little bit of crust and crumb on the outside. And what I'm going to do is fill the molds individually with a ladle. So I'll just grab a ladle. I fill it about a little bit more than halfway, and that seems to work just fine. So now that the molds have been filled, I'm going to place them in the oven, and we're going to set the oven for 350 degrees. I'd say 180 degrees Celsius. That seems about perfect. They'll be in the oven for about 10 to 12 minutes, but I like to check to make sure they're finished. So now the cake has come out of the oven. You can see it has a little bit of a spring to it. It's absolutely perfect. I'm just going to allow that to cool. One of the things you'll notice about this cake is that it does kind of dome up on the top a little bit. We're going to remove some of that to level it off. The next thing we're going to do is actually make the burnt caramel syrup. And so the burnt caramel syrup is an ingredient that I use for our confections and at the chocolate lab for different types of ganache. It's basically just sugar and water. But I cook the sugar dry in a pan until it reaches a stage of almost a carbon stage. And then I add water to it, and it creates this wonderful, strong black syrup. What I'd like to do right now is I'm going to just add dry sugar. And the dry sugar is going to go right over in this copper bowl. The sugar will start to cook and burn, but that's okay because it's what I like to do. We're using a specific amount of sugar as an ingredient for ganache, for ice cream, and for other types of products. So instead of it just having it as a regular sugar or as a light caramel, I use it as a very strong, deep, rich caramel, like dark in flavor, almost very bitter. So you can see it's burning. And you're probably like, oh my God, it's burning. That's not right. It's terrible. I know this looks crazy. So you can see how the sugar is becoming really dark and it's smoking. I turn the flame off. I'm placing the screen on top. And this is like a magic show here. It's like a rock concert. And now you have a very dark syrup that'll be thick. So I'm going to allow this to cool. I'm going to set this aside. And the next thing I'm going to work on is making the ganache. So now what we're going to do is make the ganache, and this is the burnt caramel ganache. So we're going to start with cooking some cream. And we're actually not going to cook it. I'm going to bring it up to about 42 to 44 degrees Celsius. And then from there, I'm going to add it to chocolate, our 64% custom blend made exclusively for us by Valrhona. You can also use Tainori, or you can use Manjari. Tainori and Manjari are two separate flavor profiles, so it's really up to what you like. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just warm this cream up. This is the burnt caramel syrup. So this is the syrup that we made, adding it to the cream. So you can see that this syrup we made is a little bit lighter. I talked about a variety of different ways that you can cook the burnt caramel syrup. At our confectionery kitchen, we use 3 different types of syrups. We use like a light, a medium, and a dark. And I like to check this with a thermometer just to make sure that I have some accuracy. So now I'm going to add some of the cream with the burnt sugar and the chocolate. And what I'm doing is just kind of moving quickly to create a core. You can see how it's becoming very shiny. I found that with this particular chocolate, this particular recipe, that I can add it in 3 stages. Just really trying to develop that emulsion. My preferences when I'm working with ganache is to use an immersion blender, stick blender, to make sure that we have a really good emulsion. This is such a small batch to use that piece of equipment. It's just a little bit, there's not enough there to really get enough traction. So I think it's better just to work it by hand. So now the cake is out of the oven. We've made the ganache. The next step is to slice the cake and fill the cake with the ganache. So what I'm going to do is take the cake. You can see how the cake has really held its shape nicely. But I'm going to remove the top. And this is the part that I said that you can use if you'd like to eat it. I cut the layers a little bit thicker. So now I'm placing the bottom of the cake in the mold, and I'm saving the top part. So now that I've filled the molds, the next thing that I'm going to do with the cake, I line the molds with the cake. I'm going to fill it with the ganache. So here's the ganache. It's a nice consistency. Spoon it in, but it levels really nicely. Place the cake in there. I usually turn the bottom side up. And now just a little bit more ganache on top. Once you get into production with this, you can determine your weights and levels so that everything's exactly perfect. So now the cakes have been filled with the ganache. The next step is to place the cakes in the refrigerator and let them set up, and we'll remove the rings, and then from there we'll wrap them in chocolate. So now we're going to just discuss a few of the finishing touches for the chocolate lab cake. We're making a cocoa nib infused foam that we're going to spray on top very lightly and then sprinkle with caramelized cocoa nibs. The actual foam is a basic custard. Going to pour it into the siphon. You're going to charge it. So allow this to sit, refrigerate it. One of the things you need to do though is shake it vigorously before you work with it. And then the next thing that I want to talk about is that we have a coffee infused anglaise. So this is another variation of a custard. And instead of using cocoa nibs, we're basically using coffee beans. So we're grinding coffee beans to a very coarse texture and then infusing them in milk. We allow the coffee beans to sit in the milk for maybe like an hour to 2 hours. I taste it. It depends on the coffee. It depends on the level of acidity in the coffee. So here we have our finished coffee infused anglaise. And now the next step is that we're going to unmold the cakes. So the cakes should be sitting in the fridge, and we're going to wrap them with chocolate. First of all, we use these transfer sheets. And now I have my chocolate. And my chocolate is at about 120 degrees, about 42, 45 degrees Celsius. It's not in temper, it's just warm chocolate. So I place the chocolate on here, ladle it on. So I usually pick this up and just remove it from the area. And now I'm going to wrap it. The cake is cold, so it'll actually set the chocolate up a little bit. And we just let it sit. I place it in the refrigerator, and after the chocolate's crystallized, we'll remove the acetate. So now we're getting ready to actually plate the chocolate lab cake. This is the final piece here. And Fred,
Yes.
would you like to join me?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I would love for you to help me plate this.
Is it already crystallized?
Yes, it's perfect. Yeah. So the first step is we're going to actually ladle in some of this wonderful coffee anglaise. And now we remove the transfer. And when we remove the transfer, the image will stay perfect. This is also good because we didn't apply the chocolate too warm. And so the image didn't distort. So the next step is
Cocoa nibs foam.
Let it shake it up very well. Oh, that's beautiful.
Ooh.
It's perfect.
But it's already like that, huh? Cocoa nibs, roasted.
Cocoa nibs. And then, of course, the same transfer, a little garnish on top.
Yes.
Nice little brand. Not too much. It's like a souffle. You know,
And
when
we're
you do
ready.
the top to the souffle.
Michael, thanks a lot for sharing with us today the recipe of looking like your emblematic dessert from there, yes?
Yes, it is. It's a representation of Recchiuti Confections and the Chocolate Lab.
Thanks so much, Michael.
You're welcome.
It was a big pleasure.
Yes.
J'espère que vous avez eu aussi un agréable moment avec Michael. Une recette pleine de détails, pleine de textures. Vous retrouverez tous les détails et la recette, bien sûr, sur Valrhona TV. Et moi, je vous dis à très bientôt en coulisses ailleurs. Au revoir.